My home was in the Netherlands, but my cradle was in Zanda. There, in the heart of northern Holland. I was born into a world riddled with turmoil. But when has the world not been riddled with turmoil? It was a rather uninteresting start for me. Perhaps the cold, wet forecast of northern Europe is to blame. Or maybe it's my own indecision, my own lack of direction. But youth fades quickly, especially when world war is imminent. A Dutchman's duty and so forth. All my changes were there in those trenches. The world was a different place for me after the war. My eyes were open to the changing climate, and global consciousness was bent on improving the structure of life. I began by teaching at the Girls' School of Domestic Sciences in Leeuwarden. I taught courses in drawing, painting, art history. Ultimately, it was not the career for me. It was then that I met Jan Vils. He was an architect, obsessed. I soon joined him as his assistant. And my world would change again. While working with Vils, I also created interior and furniture designs, as well as designing fabric patterns. I stayed abreast of all the avant-garde artistic literature. I pondered my place, if any, in the future of design. I had my books in winter. And then there were the pubs, all across northern Europe and Moscow, conversations and taverns, cafes. They were reshaping the art world. The future of my own career, not excluded. It was there that Vils acted as a middleman for Laga, but as a rubber floor manufacturer. He knew my interest in typography and offered me work designing their stationery. As the discussion went on, my cloudy future seemed to be clarifying, and the powerful notion of a life-altering moment was thick in the air. It was time for me to work. I drew inspiration from Theo van Doesburg and Piet Mondrian's De Stijl movement, and van Doesburg's De Stijl magazine. There was a geometric simplicity in their manifesto that appealed to me. My architectural training was evident. I built the Laga logo using interlocking squares, similar to the construction of their floors. And still uncomfortable with white space, I used black fields to pull the eye vertically and horizontally. Another aspect of De Stijl. With that behind me, I was ready to evolve even further. My next influence would be directly from Russian constructivism, with nods to Dadaism. The 20th century was much too busy to deal with complex, uninteresting text. In Solomon Tallengatter's brilliant cover for Slovo Predstavliacija Persanovo, the type playfully rains down the page. The diagonal letters mischievously reconstruct the grid. Informal Dada-esque process melds with constructivism, rigidity, to steal horizontals and verticals, and primarily red and yellow. In my next work, I manipulate many of these concepts and also add direction of pointy finger. It was crucial to me that just because the text was present in a unique way, the simplicity and the readability remained first and foremost. The next endeavor was primarily for my own edification. It was an introspective exercise, for introspective sake. I wanted to design my own identity. I wanted to see what Piet Zwart looked like. compiling doctrines, manifestos, mantras, and disciplines of various corners of the avant-garde, and knowing them well was the first step in breaking their conventions. Mamilievich broke convention with his black square. Perhaps there is homage to him in my personal logo. At this point, my career was blossoming. The guidelines of my past would soon simply be memorized. And it was time to move on. And the years went by. The seasons of life brought their changes. And my ideas, my work, were changing the face of Dubster's graphic design. I established a correspondence and a professional relationship with Erezitsky. He was a Russian constructivist who was an integral cog in the international design machine. He introduced me to photography and photomontage, which would become an essential element and what would become the largest body of work of my career. Ultimately, what it boiled down to, all of the different approaches, was that everyone was grasping in the dark for anything more, anything that personified hope. Hope that all was not lost in the potential abyss that was the unknown future. Design, art, needed to remain fresh and new to show the world that communicating with one another will always be exciting and beautiful. Now that being said, being inspired, well, that's just the beginning. I began the monumental task of the Narodowansk Kabelfabrik catalog, better known as the NKF. I mulled over my hand-rendered cover so long that I actually missed my deadline. This piece here ended up being an advertisement. But I would make up for it with my dedication to the 80-page project, in Dutch and in English. I established a theatrical movement throughout the book. I shot photographs of cross-sections of cables, large pieces of equipment, and monotonous depictions of industrialism to create direction in each spread. The text is parallel, or juxtaposed. It balances the flow. Blue, yellow, red, and black pop from the light gray pages. The geometric shapes determine the asymmetry with constant active intrusion. The objective of the NKF catalog was to transcend the otherwise mundane material being presented, and also to epitomize my position on graphic design. It was a success, and NKF was a lifelong client. I set out to transform the Dutch graphic design, all the while maintaining a loyalty to specific elemental components of the avant-garde movements of Northern Europe and Moscow. I became one of the writers of my generation's visual communications. I broke conventions to redefine them.